On September 6th, Twitter user Supercomposite, who's a multimedia artist, musician, and Loabmancer, created this thread. I discovered this woman who I call Loab. In April, the AI produced her more easily than most celebrities. Her presence is persistent, and she haunts every image she touches. Content warning, take a seat. This is a true horror story, and veers sharply macabre. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to look at AI art once again, but we're going to look at what is in fact the darker side, the creepier side, and what might be one of the AI's first, if you will, auto-generated creepypastas. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we come to the internet, obviously AI images are kind of like the rage these days. There's a lot of people making them. There's a lot of tools out there that you can use to create AI-generated imagery that can make for some amazing things. Some of them have even won entire competitions. And of course, there's a big debate as to if AI art is actually even real art. Now, I'm not here to talk about the ethics or the debates of it. I'm actually here to talk about one spooky little character that's sort of just emerged in the last few weeks just on AI art programs. Now, Loab, as you can see the images over here, this character is persisting through a lot of negatively weighted prompts on AI art tools. So to understand, let's start off with what exactly is going on. So to understand, if you use any tool, like for instance Midjourney for instance, you realize that when you're making a prompt, you have to do /stream, enter your keywords, and then what happens is in order to make Loab, or things like Loab, we introduce things known as the negative prompt weights. So the way that this works is when you're typing in a prompt, you can do ::-1. I believe actually the code is patched out. And once you provide a negative prompt, things truly are meant to provide you the polar opposite of what you're looking for. Now, for instance, if they typed in Brando, ::1, they're trying to get the polar opposite of Marlon Brando, the actor. So of course, in this case, what really got weird was when Supercomposite posted Digitapintic Skyline logo, ::1. When this prompt was inserted, 4 images were generated, and these images weren't exactly, the best if you could imagine. They all had some disfigurement to them. They all had a similar looking woman, similar facial features, although there are a few things off, faces being mangled, eyes rendered improperly, you get it. But of course, one of them had this image, Loab, on it as well too. The image is of a slightly older woman, and of course, they've got a, the only thing similar to them is of course their cheek pattern. It's got, it's highly red over here, a bit triangular. There's a few similarities, but they're all of this slightly older woman that's slightly disfigured in almost each depiction of this negative prompt. Now, Stable Diffusion, first coined from what I understand to be a group known as Stability.ai, Stable Diffusion is actually a new state-of-the-art text-to-image sort of model that can be used to create highly realistic images just from, again, prompts provided, okay? We've seen this time and time again, but you can see just how high, quality some of this is. So you can create, multiple art styles, and of course, dog in a teacup, various animation styles. There's a lot of data provided to this and a lot of sets that it's working off of, but of course, the general results can be pretty, good in terms of, the first glance here. Now, Stable Diffusion is actually a new state-of-the-art form of text-to-image AI generation. It's an image diffusion model, and one of the interesting things about this is with a lot of AI art tools, a lot of them power off of the cloud, so things like DALL-E AI and Midjourney. But with this, apparently it's so good, and you can generate so much of this art within seconds, and the best part is you can even run this off of consumer graphic cards. So a lot of the modern GPUs that we have, the NVIDIA RTX cards, I believe some of the AMD cards as well too, and I know the Intel Arc cards as well also have an amount of artificial intelligence cores on top of them. Tensor cores, whatever the name is for those specific brands. But these cores allow you to actually work with this kind of AI model just on consumer GPUs. So no longer are you required to run this off of the cloud. You can theoretically just run this off of your actual GPU locally if you run a session. And of course, these guys are working on tons of different projects, but this is generally where this new breed of artificial intelligence art comes from. Now, of course, it's in even these models that it seems as though that this Loab sticks through. And of course, you can identify it as the older looking woman with the rosy triangular cheeks. And of course, if this image doesn't keep you awake at night, well, you might have some problems. No matter what, when it comes to Loab, you can see that Loab actually does transcend through numerous prompts. So again, it's a negative weighted prompt, but if you can see, the negative weight always leads to this one character showing up. The same older looking woman, the same rosy cheeks, triangular, but of course, depending on what prompt you're providing, there are different variations to it. Some of these variations can get so dark that they borderline on snuff pornography, depending on what model you use. This, for instance, is like some mind freak form. So according to Super Composite, this is Technicolor, HDR, high dynamic range, vivid, stunning color palette, obviously, no dull, a previous output again of Loab Angel Mind Freak larval form. So again, there's multiple different versions of it. Now, if you take the word Loab and just throw that into any AI image generating tool, it's not going to give you Loab. For instance, throwing Loab into Deep AI gave me Loab, and just some street image, watery if you will. Throwing it into Night Cafe provided me this image. It looks kind of ethereal, almost looks like a great little wallpaper if you will, but that's not Loab. There's no elements of that face anywhere at all in this. And of course, in Crayon, which was formerly DALL-E 2, Loab gave me these people performing in a concert, okay? So again, the faces are a little bit disfigured, but that's something to be expected from DALL-E anyways. The faces never came out that well on this artificial intelligence anyways. According to Super Composite, there were some elements of crossbreeding images of Loab with other images of Loab, and you can even see some beautiful actual imagery. So again, with the power of negative prompt, you can start to see Loab represented, even if it's not directly in the face, you can see elements of that negative prompt replicated within other AI art forms. So clearly there's like this darker part of the artificial intelligence, or how it's perceived the data set and how it's actually perceived these negative traits. And it all sort of bleeds into this one character, just constantly referenced. That's where the persistence seems to be coming from, as far as I've been able to understand and research into this. You can see even in images where Loab shouldn't be seen, you can see that same person, alright, same triangular rough cheeks, and of course that same older character. This is the trait, the negative trait. This is what's optimized in this specific situation. Now, in this point, people understood that generally, for Loab to exist, these prompts have to be reaching into some latent space. And that latent space, when it's specifically tapped into, can get into images that look absolutely horrific, like this one. And then, of course, there's images where downlight looks absolutely just creepy. Like, the way that the skin here is presented, this is not just the older person, but you can see that if you look at it real quick, again, it's like one of those images where you squint your eye and like all those images tend to look the same because their general like pattern just sort of gets together. Maybe to me, it's because that it's a human face and it's just a human like older woman. I'm just constantly seeing it through these images. There's definitely that element of a bias from somebody like me looking into it. But of course, it's hard to deny that that Loabness, I guess, whatever the verbiage is in this case, doesn't actually seem to persist through all of these negatively reinforced prompts. I think these ones are the better ones right over here too. Like for instance, in different styles, you can see Loabness in between these two images as well too. Whether it be this like older looking like alien type character or this like girl character here too. You can literally just start to see like some element persisting, some like real negative, darker aspect of artificial intelligence is persisting and bleeding through no matter what prompt you make, as long as it's weighted negatively. And of course, the interesting image out of this latent space came out to be one of the first creepypasta characters. Obviously, before AI, we had Jeff the Killer, the Rake, Funny Mouth, and now we end up having Loab here. This is Loab in general. This actually looks like a poster to like like some 2004 horror movie. But yeah, this is the first internet cryptid, so to speak. Now, of course, Loab wasn't just found out a few weeks ago. Obviously, Super Composite worked with this a lot before too. And of course, this was first sort of dug into somewhere, I would say, around March or April, if you will, too. That's where Loab was first uncovered. But of course, Loab has persisted and become this popular character on social media. Whether you go on TikTok, YouTube, wherever, Loab persists. And it's quite possibly one of AI imagery's first actual creepypasta. Some of the imagery, however, gets into some real darker territory. There's one theme to understand when looking into this latent space, this Loab space, is a lot of the images seem to come across regarding women and children. And in some cases, I didn't really see this before in terms of artificial intelligence because a lot of AI services are really good at filtering out sort of like 18 plus prompts when it comes to like nude images. But one of them that really struck with me was a lot of the gore images as well too. When you're looking into this latent space, Super Composite built a lot of images or prompted a lot of images that came across like dead children and like, dead women in the most disfigured ways possible. Just one image, for instance, absolutely sticks with me too. It's images of children and Loab, and of course their faces are so horribly disfigured that no matter what you see, you'll always notice a Loab in these images too. But again, these traits, and when you're introducing negative prompt weights, of course, you're going so far away from something. But again, when you go far away from that prompt that you're making, it eventually leads you to this one place where everything bleeds into this darker character. In some cases, these images I have to block, but there's so many where like you see body parts missing, blood everywhere. There's an image of like just a severed head belonging to, I don't even know if this is an adult or a human or a child or something. It's some absolutely decrepit, scary shit. So in this case, when I'm looking at Loab, a lot of these images that are coming out are from Midjourney AI, some of them at least. And the real answer to it, when we ask the question, why is this happening? Well, the reality is we really don't have an actual proper explanation as to why the artificial intelligence is looking and creating lobes when given negative weight prompts. It really is something that has sort of sparked up and got a lot of popularity in the last few days, specifically with how much it's spreading on social media. But of course, the explanation beyond how an artificial intelligence works in this case, well, it really depends on what's going on with the code, what's going on with it, how it's learning, what it's doing from the data sets. Because when it's constantly given prompts, things are changing all the time. And how Loab exists and how it permeates is how the AI understands negative weights to be. What does it consider negative traits? What is the polar opposite of a lot of these prompts? This started off from what appeared to be just prompting Marlon Brando and the polar opposite of that. And when we started to really dig deep, we ended up getting lobes thrown in every possible capacity. Now, in this case, it seems with the amount of constant prompts and the constant negative weight prompts that have been provided in this case, it seems like the ability to craft lobes, if you will, these creepy characters that persist through all prompts negatively weighted, seems to be something that the AI is picking up on, and it's becoming relatively easier. These images are becoming even more macabre as time goes on. It's interesting that with these negative prompts, the artificial intelligence is spitting out like full-on gore and whatnot. It's not something that I've personally played around with before. I've never used Midjourney AI or any other tool to generate snuff pornography or generally any form of pornography. But to see that it's creating these like really decrepit images is something that I'm not going to say is concerning, because at the end of the day, it's just how these artificial intelligences work. But it's rather interesting as to why it's going down this path, why it's generating it. Is it the data set? Is it the constant human interaction? Are we doing it? Or is it the data set that's being provided and the various art forms that it's piecing together to create these sort of images? Artificial intelligence is really interesting, and because of art, everyone's sort of been talking about it. And it's time, hopefully, that we'll learn about these images too. So yeah, honestly, big ups to Super Composite for even generating what is in fact the first artificial intelligence creepypasta out there. It's truly good shit. Actually, it's one of the coolest things that I've seen in the longest time. You know, a lot of us can say that AI isn't art, but in some cases, creating things like this isn't of its own way pretty artistic as well. There's not just photos and horror behind this, but there's even an entire story. And the best part about it is the story is actually real, all right? This actually is happening in real time as I make this video. So ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about Loab in the comment section below. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.